Well, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us, and welcome to the Summerslam Sausage Sizzle. Now, that's a set of words that's going to make no sense to anyone except wrestling fans in Australia. So to our overseas viewers, listeners, yeah, that doesn't make sense. But
What they don't? What they don't have sausage sizzles in the old US or the UK or anywhere like that where people might be listening? Are
I'm
you
not
sure?
sure what they do with their sausage in other countries, but
That's probably their own private business.
that is. But yeah, welcome to the podcast, Wrestling Roadshow. So what we're
Yes.
gonna do today is we're gonna take a look at a selection of matches from a selection of SummerSlams. No doubt we'll miss something that you're maybe one of your favorite matches we miss. Apologies in advance. Enjoy what we're giving you.
Get what you're getting. Don't get upset.
Yeah, it's
Unless you send us money and then we'll plug whatever you want.
SummerSlam is an annual event. We'll likely do this again in the future, and then we'll pick up the slack on some of the stuff we missed, perhaps. Now, SummerSlam, of course, WWE or WWF, depending on your flavor. It's been WWE for almost 20 years now, but sometimes some people prefer WWF. And then there's the whole Panda thing. But yeah, it's their annual summer event. Started in 1988 and happened last week as of recording. In a way, I'm kind of glad that we didn't do it last week because I would have said something about SummerSlam. It marks the end of the American summer and the start of the Australian summer. As it's actually the middle of winter here, but it's the end of winter. And the calendar. But yeah, it was quite hot the week before. But yeah, we've had a nice bit of chill here, which so we'll throw that intro out the window. I guess most of my intro should be thrown out the window. But yeah, if you're still with us.
Hello, is anyone awake?
So yeah, SummerSlam, 1988. The first edition took place in Madison Square Garden. A very famous venue.
I've never heard of it.
In the world, I guess. But yeah, WWF's home base through the early part of their existence. And 88. What do we got?
Yeah, well, actually, I've got pretty fond memories of SummerSlam 88 because from memory, it was one of the first videos that I ever rented back in the day. Back when that was about the only way you could really watch wrestling in Australia. You go down to the local and rent out a tape or two. But yeah, I certainly enjoyed SummerSlam 88. So the first match I wanted to discuss was actually the first match from SummerSlam 88, British Bulldogs versus the Fabulous Rougeaus. They went to a 20-minute, I mean, I didn't time it, but they're telling us it was a 20-minute time limit draw, which was probably about the only negative you could realistically have against this match if you were a stickler for matches having proper results. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a great way to kick off the pay-per-view, especially the very first one. SummerSlam has been, over the years, basically one of the top pay-per-view events on the calendar. I'm assuming that's still the case. So yeah, this was a fantastic way to kick things off. And of course, I think what really intrigues me with this match too is obviously as time goes on and internet becomes a thing and you listen to different shoot interviews with different wrestlers, was how I found out about the Jacques Rougeau Dynamite Kid altercation.
I was going to ask if this was related to that. Yeah.
Yeah, so this happened quite a little bit after that incident. So it makes it even more incredible because it's one of the, I don't know if you could say famous or infamous, I don't, depending on what terminology you want to go with, but it's one of those backstage incidents that a lot of people remember and they bring up as being, just it was something that a lot of people talk about when Jacques Rougeau punched Dynamite several times in the face with a roll of quarters, busted him up pretty badly. I've read Dynamite's account in his book, Pure Dynamite. I've also heard Jacques talk about it in shoot interviews. So yeah, it was a pretty full on incident that happened, and apparently this happened just after Vince McMahon had apparently got like a locker room meeting together and said, the ribs need to stop because the ribs are starting to get out of hand. And then the next thing, blood everywhere, shattered teeth, and yeah.
But his ribs were fine.
Yes, the ribs were untouched. But yeah. So I found it pretty incredible knowing that story now, just how brilliantly they work together. And there's a part after the match where they do the time limit and they're finalizing up, and the Rougeaus go to they want a handshake, and the silly baby faces the Bulldogs. Oh yeah, okay, fine, we'll shake your hand. And instead the Rougeaus just like sucker punch them and run off. And looking back on that, I think, I wonder if that was like a little rib, like a little cheeky reference to the backstage incident. But yeah, there's been some really good opening matches to WWF pay-per-views in this era, and that's definitely one of them.
Yes, not actually the only opener we'll discuss. We've got at least another one coming up later on. Ooh, yeah.
So yeah, I'm done. I'm done. Okay, thanks. Thanks for tuning in, folks. That was my one match. What have you got, Mr. Chris Mann?
So my SummerSlam '88. This one's actually a little bit before my key era of watching the Fed.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't know you were going to give us some '88 choices.
No, the pretty much my biggest comment on this is I actually like the poster, the shot of Hogan, Savage, and Liz. I thought that's actually quite a good photo. And the match they had in the main event, I did quite enjoy. Mega Powers against the Mega Bucks, Andre and Ted DiBiase.
That's interesting. I didn't think you would have been a fan of that.
Yeah, no, it's the Mega Powers angle. I think it was one of the biggest contributors to the company's success in that time period. And I mean, yeah, it's not necessarily the in-ring style that I'm used to and really watch a lot of, but I can recognize a decent match when I see it.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. That's fair enough. You're entitled to your opinion.
So yeah, SummerSlam '88.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know if you want to call this an honorable mention, but the Intercontinental title match, Honky Tonk Man and the Ultimate Warrior. Do you have any memories or thoughts on that?
I've seen a lot of it in clips. I suppose with the length of the match, it was.
I think it was just. I think the match was one clip.
Yeah, but I guess historic match.
Yeah,
for its in-ring quality.
Yeah, but what I found interesting was, I feel when when Mean Gene got to WCW and he was flogging the WCW hotline.
1-900-909-9900. Yeah.
That's it. The number may not be active anymore, but I think even back as 1988, he was setting up for it because they do the backstage interview before the match with Honky Tonk Man and Jimmy Hart, and they do like a recap because originally it was supposed to be Honky Tonk Man and Brutus Beefcake, and Beefcake had done something where he cut Ron Bass's hair, and then Ron Bass has come out after he just had a match, and Ron Bass has attacked him and cut up his face with his spur. And they had like the big X on the screen, so you couldn't, you could kind of see, but you couldn't, and it was like, oh wow, holy, like for a kid watching that, it was like, holy shit. So that's how they explained that Brutus wasn't going to be there. And it seemed to me like Mean Gene was the only person that knew who the Honky Tonk Man's opponent was going to be. Because he says in the interview, he goes to tell Honky Tonk Man, Honky Tonk Man's like, oh, no, I want a surprise. I love surprises. Like, okay, but well, he's a very capable wrestler. You sure you don't want to know? No. Like I said, I want to be surprised. But when Honky Tonk Man goes out to the ring, commentators don't know. Howard Finkel is he says, and his opponent, and then he just like shrugs his shoulders. Howard Finkel doesn't know. So was Mean Gene the only one that knew in the WWF that Ultimate Warrior was going to run out for that match? He was an insider as far back as 1988.
Yes, yeah, and I guess that's what gave the hotline its credibility.
But yeah, look, I mean, you know, I think if the internet was around back then, you might have a bunch of people saying, "Oh, Honky got squashed, you know, beat him in under a minute. This is, you know, they've totally buried him and all this sort of thing." You know, I've heard similar things with this past SummerSlam. I guess was it Becky Lynch that came back? It was like a surprise, and she beat Bianca Belair in really quick time to win whatever women's title she had. People were upset about that, and then when Goldberg beat Brock Lesnar in the main event of whatever pay-per-view, and people were up in arms. Oh my God, such a short match. I mean, this was an example of, even though it was for the Intercontinental title, very prestigious belt, I think that was the best result, because I don't think this would be as memorable if Honky went out there and worked like an 8-10 minute match with Ultimate Warrior in 1988.
No.
This is before Warriors worked with like Rick Rude and Savage and all that sort of thing. So, still pretty green around the gills. So I think this was perfect. And apparently it was Honky Tonk Man's idea to get the match over as quickly as possible. So
smart man, he'd seen Warrior working.
So I mean, he knew he was going to get paid whether he was out there for 30 seconds or 30 minutes. So he's like, "Hey, I'm taking the 30 seconds."
That's it. You're not getting paid by the hour.
Exactly. But and I think it also worked too with Honky just being such a cocky heel. Like I said before, Mean Gene, supposedly the only guy that knew what was going on, trying to tell him his opponent. He's like, no, it doesn't matter. I'm the greatest Intercontinental champion of all time. And actually, when Howard Finkel doesn't know, and he's like, talking to pantomiming to the referee, like, oh, who's meant to be coming out, and Honky gets on the mic, give me someone to wrestle. I don't care who it is. I think it really worked when the Warrior came out and just blasted him, and like, that'll teach you for being such a cocky SOB, So
historic match.
Yes.
So then we move along down the timeline, down the road, East Rutherford, New Jersey, Meadowlands Arena, SummerSlam 1989. And we'll be looking at the historic match of Mr. Perfect and the Red Rooster.
Hey?
What? No, that's not what you had in mind?
No, I had another, I think it was another opening match. I could be incorrect on this. For 1989, I was quite fond of the Brainbusters versus the Heart Foundation.
That was the opener, but they did have a dark match, but it was the opener for the pay-per-view.
Yes. So, I mean, just so rich, the tag team division in the WWF at that time. And this was just another example of a fantastic opening match to a pay-per-view, a tag team match. Brainbusters relatively new in the WWF. They hadn't been there all that long, and they actually scored what was deemed to be an upset when they beat Demolition for the tag team titles. And they're facing the Heart Foundation, and this 89 was also really good because I love the interactions between Tony Schiavone and Jesse Ventura. Ventura just really cuts Schiavone to pieces at certain points, especially in one of the later matches we might talk about. But yeah, Tony's like lamenting that, the Brainbusters, why aren't they putting up the WWF tag team titles? And Jesse's saying, hey, the match was signed before they won the titles. So that was really interesting. I don't know what the story was as to why they suddenly just put the belts on the Brainbusters. It was a really out of the blue thing. Andre had a lot to do with it. But yeah, okay, so tag team titles aren't on the line. Still a tremendous match.
Yeah, it seems an odd decision for what was at that point the second biggest show of the year. And I guess it still is, so some prefer the Rumble. I do.
I do too.
Yeah, it's an odd decision not to put what Well, they didn't really have a lot of belts at that stage, unlike now
No.
where they've got about 600. So yeah, I think at that point they only really had the WWF, the IC, and the tag belts. And on this show, they only had the IC title. So yeah, I don't know why they didn't put the tag belts up.
Yeah, and what the strange thing too is that the Brainbusters win the match. So it's not like the Hart Foundation beat them and like, oh well, too bad, it was a non-title match, and then they have like another match, somewhere down the line, sort of, sets up something else. Yeah, I mean the Brainbusters win this, and and just one little thing to the finish that I loved, and you don't really see this sort of stuff anymore, is I'm trying to remember, was it Brett or was it? I think it was Brett that was trying to pin Tully Blanchard, and Arn comes off the top. Referee's distracted. Arn comes off the top with like a double axe handle right at the back of the head. He gets Tully out of the way. Arn covers him, but what he does is he covers his head. I don't know if you noticed this when you watched it. Arn like covers his head up because he's not the legal man. And not that the referee would have, disqualified them or anything. It was, oh well, this is the finish. I'm going to do the count. But just little things like that I just love. It just a lot of legitimacy now.
Arn was a genius.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a little tiny thing, but you don't see it anymore because no one cares anymore. There's nothing legitimate about what they're doing, and the referees don't matter, and there's no rules, so who cares? But it's just such a cool little heel move to have the presence of mind to like cover his head in case the referee saw him and thought, hey, wait a minute, you're not Tully. So yeah, it was great stuff.
Speaking of things that it's not so real anymore and it doesn't make any sense anymore. Fun fact, everyone in this match that has been able to has appeared for AEW.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I imagine Jim can't, but...
Yeah, he wasn't answering Tony Khan's phone calls. But yeah, Brett turned up on one of their first pay-per-views to present the title.
That's right.
Arn and Tully are regular fixtures there.
Yeah.
Reasonably well-reviewed historic match there as well. So good choice.
Thank you.
Do we have anything else for 89?
Oh, I do.
Ooh, what do we got?
This is my honorable mention for 89. Ultimate Warrior versus Ravishing Rick Rude.
Which you alluded to the previous. Yeah.
Yes, I did. I thought I'd put that as an honorable mention. It wasn't a bad match. Warrior was, working with some pretty quality opponents, where he was able to have longer matches, not like the previous year where it was, kind of like the Goldberg thing. The Goldberg just comes in, kills and destroys and then leaves. Warrior is starting to have some pretty good matches. I'm not saying that he's Frank Gotch or Dean Malenko at any point, but he's passable and he's doing some good work. So I thought I'd put that in as my honorable mention for 89.
And as much criticism as Warrior gets, and to be honest, a good portion of it is deserved, being Dean Malenko is not what he needed to be doing
to
get that character over.
No. Yeah.
1989. So moving on, we're up. Geez, they held a lot of these in the same general area. We're down to the Spectrum in Philly for 1990.
They kind of work in the local territory.
Yeah, working the market. 90. What do we got?
All right, so 1990, my pick for the best match on this show. A lot of these pay-per-views during this era, a lot of matches. This one had 10. I want to say 10. A lot of filler, like a lot of the previous years. But I think that it's hard to go past the main event. Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude for the WWF World Title. I guess there was sort of like a period where Rude was kind of out of the title picture, and then they all of a sudden like brought him back into it. He's got a completely different look now. He's the shorter hair, and I guess to try to look more like a world champion. And yeah, I thought these guys had they had an all right match. Wasn't really a lot on this pay-per-view that really stands out for me. Heart Foundation and Demolition for the World Tag Team titles. That's the 2 out of 3 falls match. I mean, that was all right.
At least they remembered to bring the belts to this show.
Yeah, and this was Crush and Smash. Axe was, and it was really integrated, like with the Legion of Doom, and Legion of Doom came out and they got involved in this match. Demolition had the Freebird rule at the time with the 3 members, Axe, Smash, and Crush. But yeah, I mean, a lot of filler on this show.
Yeah, just looking at the card, very little cracked the 10-minute mark, and even the main went 5 seconds over. So, yeah, a lot of matches, but not a lot of wrestling.
No. And sadly, Rick Rude would leave shortly after losing this match. And but for WCW fans, brilliant. Because, he went straight to WCW and did some really good work there. So... But yeah, slim pickings for this year, Chris, man.
Yes. So moving on to 1991, we're still staying in the territory. We're over to Madison Square Garden, back to where it all began. And yesterday, as of recording, was 30-year anniversary of this event.
Yeah, and I think the one match that most people would have picked out as celebrating that 30-year anniversary, of course, was
Virgil and Ted DiBiase.
Yes, absolutely. But also Mr. Perfect when he dropped the IC to Bret Hart that year.
Yeah, I suppose that could work too.
They were all right. It was an okay match. I don't know if passing the torch is the right terminology here. I feel like it probably was because the Hart Foundation, they decided to split the team. Bret's going to get his big run as a singles wrestler. Mr. Perfect went into this match with a really bad back. He would end up taking quite a bit of time off after this. And you can tell that, he's hobbling around a lot. I believe he had a broken tailbone and also some other issues there. He had to get surgery after this match. But even like with that injury, these two guys, amazing chemistry. Of course, it's not the last match, that they would have that was an absolute classic. And I mean that's easily got to be the pick for 91. Bret becoming Intercontinental Champion for the first time. Stu and Helen are in the audience, and they really make a big deal out of it. Mr. Perfect makes Bret look like $1 million in this match,
and that wouldn't have been hard at all.
No. But I guess it was kind of just putting that final little polish on it. That this is possibly going to be the next guy. What was kind of, I don't know why, but Bret like tore Mr. Perfect's ring gear, and then after Mr. Perfect gives up in the sharpshooter, like there's no like lingering in the hold. As soon as Bret locks it on, that's it. He's done. And poor old Mr. Perfect is trying to get out of the ring. He's accepted that he's lost. He's not trying to do anything to. And Bret rips off the rest of his singlet and carries it around like a trophy, like he's cut off his head and displayed it on his wall. And I just thought, oh my God, But
SummerSlam was hot, so Take it off.
So poor old Kurt Hennig has to walk out in his jocks, literally. That was just a complete, Mr. Perfect just saying, yeah, I'm going to do everything I can, to make this guy as, the next big intercontinental champion. The other funny thing is, like I said, they had Stu and Helen in the crowd, and Lord Alfred Hayes is there, and they cut to Lord Alfred. He says to Stu, "Oh, I want to get your exact thoughts on what you think about your son at this moment." And Stu goes, "Yeah, it's wonderful. Okay, well, thank you very much, Stu." And Stu's still talking. He's pulled the microphone away from him 5 minutes ago. And Stu's just looking at him what the fuck? So I think someone got stretched later on, and I think it was Lord Alfred Hayes. But yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant match.
And this show in 1991, also notable for being the last, I believe, event that Ultimate Warrior worked until 96. So,
before he had his little sojourn.
Yeah, he's had his little spit with Vince, and Vince couldn't wait to fire him.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't make it that far. So I kind of got to
Visited Warrior.
Yeah, well, this is true. Again, I mean, it's another SummerSlam where it's a lot of filler, but that's not, even though we're talking about it being the number 2 or number 3 pay-per-view, if you don't count, if you're not a big fan of Royal Rumbles. But yeah, just like WrestleMania, there's a lot of matches on here. I do want to mention before we move on. Do you have any other thoughts on? The jailhouse match between the Big Boss Man and the Mountie. I love this match. It's just silly. It's ridiculous. Where the loser of the match has to spend a night in jail. It's the whole, obviously it's I'm the Mountie, I'm the law here, and the Big Boss, no, I'm the law here, and it's not a bad little match, but what really makes it for me is the vignettes afterwards, where they take the poor old Mountie after he's just called the cops, the local New York cops, corn-fed hicks or something, and they're reefing him in, and he's fighting it the whole way, he's acting like he didn't know that this was going to happen. He's acting like he thought, oh, I'm going over in this match. He does such a great job, and he's got that French Canadian accent, and they take him out of the paddy wagon. He's like, oh, you're stupid, this. I'm the Mountie. It's just fucking great. Sorry, and sorry, rated PG or MA, but my favorite vignette is when. I don't know if you've seen this, but when they try to fingerprint the Mountie. Have you seen this bit?
No.
So they're trying to fingerprint the Mountie, and he's not having any of it. He says, "Oh, you want my finger, do you? Here you go." And he gives him a middle finger. This is years before Stone Cold Steve Austin, mind you. And of course, so they take that middle finger and they force it into the ink. He's like, no. Look, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it still tickles me. So yeah, I've got to give that match a bit of a plug as well for 91.
Well, yeah, there is the saying that funny doesn't equal money, but good comedy on wrestling, it's good.
I enjoyed it. I don't know about anyone else, but I enjoyed it.
You like what you like, and that's all that matters.
Yep, that's it. And I've got the mic, so screw you if you didn't like it.
So, moving on, we are taking a little bit of a deviation from the little territory circuit they were running here, and
yes.
We're in England, London.
Holy shit!
At Wembley.
That's amazing. They're all clustered in the northeast, and then all of a sudden, fuck it, we're gonna go on the other side of the world.
Yeah, for what was at the time, and for quite a while, the second biggest drawing event in WWF history, behind, of course, drawing 48 million at the Silverdome for Mania 3.
Yeah, absolutely, 48 million. Yes, that's an accurate number.
So yeah, we allegedly had 80,355 people here. It's now the fourth largest. So yeah, Mania 29 and 32 snuck in there. Oh well, 32 is now the record. It's some creative accounting going on somewhere, no doubt.
Well, I'd have an easy time believing the crowd figure at Wembley Stadium. Man, it was huge. Yeah, it was huge. Probably the longest entry ramp of any show you'll ever see.
Well, yeah, being in the middle of a stadium, they kind of need to put the ring in the middle.
Well, yeah, that would help.
Yeah, and of course, this event most famous for the match between Davey Boy Smith and Bret Hart.
Yeah, and that was the real main event.
Well, it was the actual main event too.
Well, what they did was they kind of did a thing where for the American pay-per-view audience, they said the main event was Randy Savage and Ultimate Warrior for the WWE title, but everywhere else it was Bret and Bulldog. So that's why I say that they kind of had a it was the main event, but they still couldn't give it to Bret and Bulldog, I guess, because oh no, that's the IC belt. Can't have that as the main. But this was very clearly why people were there. They wanted to see the hometown boy win his first major singles championship. And yeah, I mean, I'm probably getting a bit of, if you're not a Bret Hart fan, then you're probably not enjoying this podcast very, very much. But, Bret just had some tremendous matches. Not just at SummerSlam, but any time he worked. And this was just another example. I think Bret lists this as his favorite match, or what he thought was one of his best efforts.
Yeah.
In his book. I mean, I don't know if I agree, but it's certainly right up there as a fantastic match.
Yeah, and British Bulldog going over, winning the Intercontinental title in front of his hometown. According to Bret's statements in his book, Bulldog was celebrating a little bit early. And this match is even more impressive when you realize that Bulldog was actually up all night doing crack with Jim Neidhart.
As some other podcasters famously discussed. Yep, he was up all night with Jim, apparently. Yeah, and I guess that really it's kind of like what I was saying earlier about the Rougeaus and the Bulldogs, that when you know more of the story behind the scenes, it illuminates the match even more. Like, you already think, oh, yeah, it was a great match, but then, when you find out that Bulldog wasn't really in the best of condition, and yet, Bret Hart was able to carry him to, I mean, what can we say, a 5-star match? So yeah, I mean, it's just another example of why Bret Hart is considered one of the best of all time. Whether you like him or not, he kind of likes to lament about things and whinge about things or whatever. But nah, I mean, regardless of what you think of Bret Hart personally, you can't go past his ability.
For more of Greg's Bret Hart love, you can check out our 93 retrospective earlier in the archive.
Oh, I'm just all over it. I need to write some more stuff. Just try to talk about someone else for a change.
Oh, I mean, yeah, Bret is considered one of the greatest of all time. And through the majority of this period, he was like easily the best in-ring worker they had. So, Bret Hart fan. Yeah, that's normal.
I hope so. Otherwise, you've tuned into the wrong podcast.
Yeah, so that's 1992.
Hang on a second. We're not done with. I want to still talk about some 92 stuff.
But wait, there's more.
There is, because you also get my thoughts on this. What did you think of I guess it wasn't. Oh no, it wasn't the coffin match, was it, with Undertaker and Kamala? That came later, didn't it? I'm trying to think, but also another story that came out of that was Legion of Doom. They wrestled Money Inc. in the pay-per-view opening match. There were a couple of dark matches prior, where apparently something went awry with Hawk. He went off with the London chapter of the Hells Angels, apparently. Maybe he was with Davey Boy and Jim as well.
You've got to wonder why they keep touring overseas.
Yeah,
really
nothing.
goes to plan.
No, I mean, you hear about the Scissors incident with Sid and Arn in WCW, and they went to the UK, and
the flight from hell in 2000.
Yeah, North Korea had some issues. I mean, I think they should just stay in the continental United States.
Being held hostage by the Saudis.
Yeah. But I guess if you, Ultimate Warrior Randy Savage was also interesting. Again, some people might nitpick and say, "Oh, it was a count out. It was for the WWF title. Why didn't we get a result?" Obviously, there was a lot of storyline involved with Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect, where Flair and Perfect were playing mind games that we're either going to be in Randy's corner or we're going to be in the Ultimate Warrior's corner, and of course, both guys come out and they're not in either corner. And then they come out as the match is going on, and Savage has the match in hand. He dives, silly, dive out of the ring at Flair, and they just, they beat the hell out of him out there. That was another example of not a bad Ultimate Warrior match. So, I mean, again, it's working with Randy Savage, but still, I mean, it wasn't bad. And this was after the Ultimate Warrior had, he'd left the first time, and then he'd come back, and he was wearing that really weird muscle bodysuit because I guess he kind of slimmed down a little bit because of the new drug policy or something. And
that kind of puts my point from 91. It kind of knocks that on the head. 91 was not Warrior's last match before 96. I'll admit I was wrong. So Warrior in his singlet. Carry on.
Yeah. But there was, it was kind of a rare occasion when you had two baby faces wrestling for the WWF title. But, obviously with, Flair and Mr. Perfect kind of added that heel, that heat to the match that it probably needed, especially being in England. So, that wasn't too bad either. And also maybe a slight little honorable mention, I'd go with Rick Martel and Shawn Michaels. They were both trying to win the affections of Sensational Sherry. And there was some really good interactions. And again, we talk about Ultimate Warrior and Randy Savage, a babyface match. This was a heel match, two heels. And that ended unsatisfactorily as well, double count out. But yeah, there was some all right stuff on this, but once again, a lot of filler.
So we got the heel match there, and then the two singles title matches are face-face. So yeah, very unorthodox event once they left the territory.
Yeah, they certainly went nuts when they went in national. And also, I should mention with that Bulldog and Bret Hart match, because it was the two baby faces, you then had the extra element with Diana, the sister of Bret Hart and the wife of the Bulldog, and she was sort of, not sure how this was going to go, and she was conflicted about, should I, what do I do? And they kept cutting to her, and she was really good, I thought.
I agree.
She made, her expressions when, things were going on, and they would cut to her, and she knew what to do. So she wasn't sitting there laughing when she was meant to be like, oh no, oh that's terrible. She was great in that. So,
well, she grew up in the Heart Dungeon.
Yeah, exactly. So, I've actually just to get a bit off topic. I actually have liked when Diana was involved in wrestling. Of course, later on, like they worked in an angle with Bulldog and Shawn, if you remember. So yeah, she was great there too.
Yeah, I think I guess she fits the role of family and well, like family to the hearts, but wife of Davy. I think there's a lot of like wives and family members that have come in over the years that have actually been surprisingly good performers.
Yeah.
Well, I'm jumping a little bit down the road here, but part of what I watched for 2005 had a promo between Eddie and Vicky Guerrero.
I was just thinking of that example. Yeah.
Yeah, that was some of Vicky's earliest stuff in wrestling, and she was a lot better than I remember her at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one example, but yeah, I guess the wives and family members, yeah, they can be quite good.
Yeah. I mean, sorry.
Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, well, as you guys, for those of you listening, would probably have figured it out by now. We're not the biggest fans, like, of the current product when it comes to like WWE or whatever. But what I do know of more recent stuff was I'm pretty sure Vicky became like one of the biggest heels in the company.
Yeah, so I think through 2007, 8, 9, whatever, that period, which actually wasn't watching from '07 forward. I think she was a general manager at one point. She had a bit of a group going with Chavo as the family, or La Familia probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she turned into quite a capable on-screen performer. And now she's working in AEW, managing Nyla Rose, which is pretty terrible. And they initially had her as the manager of Andrade, El Idolo, the former La Sombra from CMLL and New Japan.
What's going on? What?
CMLL.
Talking English over there?
I'm trying. Yes, so she come in initially as the manager of Andrade, and
Okay.
it was pretty bad. Luckily, Chavo come in and they rescued that angle, and now it's gone from pretty bad to just
Worse, maybe. No?
it's not a reason to watch the show, but it's yeah. Anyway, so back to the good old days.
Okay. Yeah, we kind of went a bit off topic there, didn't we?
So moving on, 1993, we're in Auburn Hills, Michigan, so a little way out of London, back in the general area of the territory, some hometown, sort of in the home area for the WWF. And yeah, what do we got from 93? We got the new generation, a lot of new names on this roster that haven't appeared on previous SummerSlams.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, this was a period, I think, where WWF was kind of repositioning itself. I think a certain steroid trial probably had something to do with that. So,
His life,
sorry.
the trial of his life.
Yeah, absolutely. And from what I understand, Jerry Jarrett was going to run things if Vince had have gone to jail. And Jerry Jarrett, being when he wrestled, he was a smaller guy, I guess, in comparison to the other wrestlers. So he was pretty big on this like pushing like smaller wrestlers. When I say smaller, that's obviously not meant to be an insult or anything, but I mean when you think about previous era where you had Hulk Hogan and Andre and all the big muscle guys, a lot of those kind of guys are getting phased out or have already been phased out. And just looking at because I'm looking at the card on my monitor as we're going through this, and
A couple of small guys on there, Yokozuna, Bam Bam.
well, that's what I'm going to say is
Morales.
that's what I was going to say is what big guys they have. They're not big necessarily in terms of muscular. Like you've got Giant Gonzalez, legitimate near 8 foot tall. You've got Yokozuna, 568 pounds. You've got, Bam Bam Bigelow, big guy, but not in a muscular sense. They've got Ludwig Borger. He was a pretty big guy. He was a pretty, muscular kind of guy, but not over the top like we had seen in the 80s era.
We're not dealing with bodybuilder physiques here on the big fellas.
Yeah, I think the World Bodybuilding Federation has kind of moved on. Although we do have Lex Luger, so
At least he was taking his Psycho Pro.
yeah, that was just
Not
Psycho
to be
Pro.
confused with Choco Pro, but
Yeah, will you be serious? But yeah, I mean, really, apart from Lex Luger, there's not like a lot of guys, at least on this card, that you would really like. The big, absolute gym junkie type of guys. So for we've, not to say that these guys aren't in shape, but I think you can see where I'm going with this. Anyway, let's move on to what I thought were good matches before I just bury myself completely. So yeah, SummerSlam '93, it holds a special place in my heart, Mr. Chris Man, because this was another tape I rented out a fair bit as a kid. I also had the WWF magazines from around that time, and I also had the WWF magazine SummerSlam '93 magazine, which was just like a program. I don't have them anymore, unfortunately, but I think that's why I like this SummerSlam a lot, because I had all the magazines around that period. So my pick for this, again, we've got a great tag match. It wasn't quite the opening match; it was the second match, if you don't count the dark match. Steiner Brothers and the Heavenly Bodies for the WWF Tag Team titles, not to be confused with the Smoky Mountain Tag Team titles.
So I was just thinking, yeah, we've got a WCW team against a Smoky Mountain team for the WWF titles.
No, it's what a time! What a time to be a fan. Yeah. So Jim Cornette, he had just debuted in the WWF. At this point, he was doing Smoky Mountain Wrestling. His first appearance on television in the WWF, Bobby Heenan just puts him over like $1 million. Bobby couldn't have done more for Jim if he had unzipped his pants in the middle of the ring and blown him. Oh, sorry. Sorry, this is a family show. Fuck. But no, like Bobby Heenan he puts Jim over like $2 million. He makes it clear he's got this team, the Heavenly Bodies, and they've dominated Smoky Mountain Wrestling for 1.5 years, and now they want to come to the big smoke, and no pun intended. And
felt like what you did there.
They want they want the WWF Tag Team Championship, which just happened to be held by the Steiner Brothers, and this was a really good back and forth tag match. It goes for about 9.5 minutes, but there's a lot of movement in the match. There's not a lot of lulls. There's not a lot of side headlocks and wear downs, and it's always like back and forth action, and this was a really good showcase of Tom Pritchard and Jimmy Del Rey, who would have been completely unknown to WWF audiences, and I thought they made a really good account of themselves.
Yeah, no, it's the actual second incarnation of the Heavenly Bodies. So
That's
Jimmy
right.
Del Rey, really pretty fresh, even to the Smoky fans, after Stan Lane retired.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if I'm going to cop heat for this. I actually preferred Pritchard and Del Rey, just because, like you said, it was originally Stan Lane and Tom Pritchard because they couldn't get Bobby Eaton. Because Bobby Eaton chose to stay with WCW. Otherwise, you would have seen the Midnight Express in Smoky Mountain. But instead, we got Tom Pritchard and Stan Lane, and they were a good team. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, they were a really good team, but I just felt like there was more chemistry, just for me, more cohesion between Dr. Tom and the Gigolo. So, hey, that's his name. That was his nickname. What are you smirking about over there? I'm not making this up. but yeah, it's also one of my favorite tag matches. So, and it's in the Michigan, of course, hometown for the Steiners, and they got the mother and the sister in the crowd, and Todd Pettengill talks to them before the match, and the sister actually calls him Rob instead of
Yeah.
Rick. Yeah, so a little bit of a slip there, but shit, who cares? And yeah, so and then they wrestled a bit more too. Steiner's ended up going to pardon me, to Smokey and facing the Heavenly Bodies down there. So it was a nice little talent exchange, and you don't really. Well, I suppose they do it now in AEW.
They'll let
But
anyone
I don't
in.
know. Sorry.
They'll let anyone in.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Like, for the Smoky Mountain fans to all of a sudden, oh wow, Rick and Scott Steiner are going to be coming in, and it was only just for a few shots. It wasn't like, oh, they're part timers here. It was like, wow, we better get and watch this show. Whereas, yeah, now it's just like I think the way AEW do it now, it's not that special.
Not really, but although, to be fair, looking at it from the perspective of a Smokey fan, having the Steiners come in, it is different for the most part from the AEW perspective because they're the bigger place for a lot of the people coming in.
Yeah.
So I guess it would be more like, I guess looking at AAA when they're actually no, that's not. I guess looking at NWA when they bring in a bigger AEW guy in. So
yeah,
there's a different way of looking at it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
And it was the same too with a bit like with WCW. Like Smokey worked with WCW as well, so that was different. Did you have any thoughts on 93? I've got a couple of other things.
No, very little from me here.
Yeah. So I think I've got to give an honourable mention to the Intercontinental title match between Shawn Michaels and Mr. Perfect. I think this was something that Shawn Michaels kind of lamented that he would have liked to have worked more with Mr. Perfect. But then I guess Perfect kind of had to stop wrestling due to injuries. But they had started to have a feud. They had a really wild brawl when Raw first started. I don't know if you've seen it, where they were like, as this phone continues to annoy me, I don't know if that's coming through, but I'll just switch that to silent because I've got more important things to do here. The early days of Raw were kind of cool because sometimes things would just happen that you didn't really expect in the WWF. And so Mr. Perfect and Shawn had that big brawl. And I think it was, I want to say it was Howard Finkel's car that got trashed. Where they took out his windscreen and I think Mr. Perfect hip tossed Shawn onto the hood of the car and Shawn's foot went through the windshield.
I'd heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently that was Howard Finkel's car, and they said, "Oh, okay, well, I guess whatever is good for the business." But they paid him for it, so they paid to get it fixed. But yeah, and they also had the match at I guess WrestleMania 9. That was that year too. So yeah, they had a little bit of a feud going. By this point, Diesel is in the WWF, and he proves the difference in this one. So yeah, count out, meh. But yeah, no, that was a pretty good match. And also was when Bret Hart and Jerry Lawler were having their feud.
Yeah,
of course.
Started at King of the Ring. Check out our King of the Ring 93 episode.
What a great write-up. Yeah, started at King of the Ring, and I think this did a lot for Bret Hart because there was a lot of storyline in this. It wasn't just matches. It was like real storylines and promos and things like that. And Jerry had really volcanic heat. It's really unfortunate that like younger fans or people that haven't watched for, back then, that don't realize just how good Jerry Lawler was. And So Brett actually did double duty on this one. He wrestled Doink. And you get this great promo from Jerry Lawler. He comes out with a crutch after Brett had come to the ring, and Jerry Lawler comes out with a crutch, and he's got like what looks like a big ice pack on his knee, and he's saying, "Oh, some blue-haired woman drove into me on the way to the arena, so I've injured my knee, and I won't be able to wrestle Bret Hart. But here's my court jester, Doink the Clown." And they have a good match because Doink was, at this point, Matt Bourne, who was a very good wrestler. So despite the gimmick, Brett and Doink had this really good match. And there was some interaction with Owen, who was kind of just kicking off the whole Rocket thing after he had been the Blue Blazer, but they didn't mention that until later on that he was under the mask. So here he's like completely new to WWF fans, and he's there with Bruce. And, they're at ringside and all this. And I don't know if this was a rib, but Doink threw a bucket of water on Bruce. Not on Owen, but on Bruce. And Bruce goes ballistic. And I think Brett talks about this in his book as well, that Bruce did a little more than what he was supposed to and kind of got in a shit with Vince. And I think he was also trying to get a job, which never happened. So yeah, Brett loses that by disqualification when Jerry Lawler comes in, hits him with a crutch, and reveals that, oh, he's not injured at all. Oh, funny.
That old trick.
Funny that, yeah. Oh, he's not injured. Oh my God. And so yeah, he beats Brett half to death with a crutch, and he's happy with himself. He's going to the back with Doink. And then Jack Tunney comes out and says, Jerry Lawler, if you don't agree to fight Bret Hart, you'll be banned for life, which I thought was a little bit harsh. I mean, we've seen wrestlers, walk out of matches before and they just come back and wrestle again. But no, this time, hey, Jerry, if you don't get in that ring, you will no longer be a part of the company. So he's like, oh, shit. So, yeah, and they have a good little match. And I kind of like the finish to this, actually. Brett beats him with a sharpshooter, but then refuses to release the hold. And this goes on for a long time. And all the referees, I mean, the who's who of agents that were around at the time, like Rene Goulet and Pat Patterson, and Tony Gurria, and Chief J Strongbow. I mean, everyone that was, Arnold Skolin might have even come out. And they are all trying to get him to. So eventually the referee just says, right, we have to reverse the decision. He's disqualified. So it allows Jerry to keep the king, because that was the whole thing of this, was who is the real king in the WWF. So it lets the heel be the king, but he was comprehensively beaten. So it doesn't really do anything to Bret, and he can continue being Bret Hart instead of, being the king of the WWF, which doesn't really matter for Bret at this point. He's pretty over and pretty high up on the pecking order. So this was a good way for Jerry to kind of keep the king deal so he could brag later that I'm still the king and all that, even though he was obviously, had the shit beaten out of him.
But yeah, technically didn't lose the crown.
Exactly. That's what's important. He didn't lose the crown. That's right.
Okay, and that wraps up 1993. So 1994, and we are at the United Center in Chicago, Illinois. It's home of the Chicago Bulls and a very topical venue for the happenings of the last couple of weeks in the old pro wrestling. AEW drawing their biggest ever crowd, and CM Punk returning after 7 years off.
Wow.
But, yeah, we're in 1994, and that hasn't happened yet.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, so...
was that show memorable?
94?
No, the AEW show.
It wasn't too bad.
Memorable?
I mean, the Punk thing's probably one of the biggest moments in wrestling for this decade. And I know it's early, but it's going to take a lot to knock it off.
Well, yeah, I agree. But I was just going to say, because apart from this Bret Hart, Owen Hart cage match, not very memorable this SummerSlam.
Oh, there's one match there that you're sleeping on.
I think I know what you're talking about, Mr. Chris Man.
And if you thought we could get through a SummerSlam retrospective and not deviate into my favorite topic, you'd be sorely mistaken. We are talking, of course, about the All
Undertaker
Japan.
versus Undertaker.
We're talking about the All Japan Women's Exhibition match.
God, here we go.
WWF Women's Title, Medusa, or Alundra Blaze, as they wanted to call her, and Bull Nakano. Bull has become one of my favorite wrestlers of all time due to recent watchings of back catalogs. This match,
What sort of back catalog? What sort of back catalogs?
The All Japan Women's stuff.
Oh,
yeah,
okay, not the stuff that you get from the down the alleyway.
I don't know what you're on about. But yeah, this match here, I watched on a curiosity, and it was actually a lot better than I had expected, even knowing how good these two can be. It's not blow away greatest match in the world, but it was a pretty good match. The crowd was very into it as well. WWF having a women's division for a bit in the early 90s before turning the whole concept to shit in the late 90s. So I quite enjoyed that match. The fans took to Bull quite well. The division could have had a bigger future, but did not, and sort of wrapped up completely when the belt got dropped in the bin on Nitro.
Do you think?
I enjoyed it.
Do you think the part of the reason for the women's division falling down was they just couldn't find enough good American women's wrestlers at that time?
I think that would definitely be a contributing factor because you had Medusa. Then there were others, I guess, not too across who was there at the time. They had Rhonda Singh, Bertha Faye, Monster Ripper, all the same person, if you know. Yes, they had her. I guess they potentially. I think Debbie Malenko might have done a knee and retired by this point. There were a few good Gaijin girls that All Japan Women were using, and even I think FMW might have had someone as well at this point. I think you're right. That might be why the division fell. They had Luna too, who was actually on this show.
Yeah, I was gonna say because the matches I've seen of Luna, she was pretty good. Obviously a heel, but she always seemed to manage women against Medusa.
And that might have just been a way to get some longevity out of the program. So when they did actually run that match, it meant a bit more.
Yeah, that's true.
Jacqueline would have been somewhat around at this point, I think, as an option to the booster division. I obviously didn't get there until a few years later, but I think she'd started wrestling at this point. And they could have brought in a lot of Mexican girls too, but they didn't.
Yeah, because I remember when Medusa did go to WCW, and they tried to do basically the same thing. They tried to build a women's division around her, and they kind of went down the WWF route as well, where they brought in a lot of the Japanese girls. But they also brought in I think Debbie Combs and some of these women that were they were kind of like from the 80s. So of the local of the American talent they brought in, they were usually from the 80s. They didn't really have a lot of newer, younger, baby faces.
They had Malia Osaka they could have done something with, who was actually American.
Oh, is she? Okay.
But I guess they didn't present her that way.
Okay. Yeah. So are you? Is that your rant done for?
That's my highlight of 1994.
Is that it?
I thought I'd let you talk about your favorite topic here.
Well, Bret Hart again. But I'm not a apologetic about this because it's to me it's one of the greatest steel cage matches. Not just that it was one of the best SummerSlam matches, but also just one of the best matches. Not just from a wrestling perspective, but also the storyline as well, because we're now well and truly into Owen turning heel. Owen's jealous of Brett, and wants his spot, and blah 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 blah. And yeah, it's led to this match, steel cage match for Brett's title. They've got the whole family there. They take up like the whole front row on one side. All the various brothers and sisters, as well as Davey Boy Smith and Jim Neidhart, who had just not long returned to the WWF after taking a little sabbatical. And, of course, Davey Boy is still on good terms with Brett. Jim's decided to side with Owen. And, man, it's... Considering the storyline and how heated it was and all that sort of thing, no blood in a cage match. And yet, I still think it's one of the best steel cage matches you'll ever see. Because I think it was more about the basis of it was Owen saying, I'm a better wrestler than you. I'm better than you at everything. So it wasn't one of those kind of feuds where you wanted to see a lot of, like, blood and chairs and putting through tables, and it wasn't that kind of thing. It was more I'm the better wrestler kind of feud that just happened to be that they were brothers, which made it work so well. So I think it's an amazing match.
Well, yeah, and coming after the fantastic match, which honestly I prefer the Mania 10 match, but that's a matter of flavor there. They're both extremely high quality matches. But yeah, coming off that, they're building on that. They've got this. And I know mileage may vary on the importance of this particular metric, but this was the second WWE match to receive 5 stars in the Observer.
Oh, Uncle Dave has come through, has he?
Yeah, the first was Razor and Shawn with the ladder, but this is only the second match in WWE history to get 5 in the Observer.
Wow, and I bet they were all very excited over that.
Yeah, and it'd be it wouldn't be another one for another couple of years.
Was it my man Brett again?
It was with Austin in Mania.
Ooh,
also a world-class match.
Well, they in Dallas, were they? Yeah, sorry, folks.
I believe they were back in Chicago, not this venue, but
so a little bit far from Dallas.
Yeah, I think they still got world-class TV in Chicago, though.
Oh, okay. Well, that's something.
But so that's 94. Also main evented by the I guess more of a novelty than anything, the Undertaker versus Undertaker match, and they had Leslie Nelson in doing detective skits throughout the show. It's interesting, but I don't know if it's particularly great. The other Undertaker, of course, being played by primetime Brian Lee from Smoky Mountain.
Ooh. Gee, the Smoky Mountain representation has been picking up in the last 10 minutes or so.
Yeah, it's the way it used to be, and the way Vince liked it.
Will you stop? I've got to say though that I rented this back in the day, and this was when I was probably starting high school, probably more the end of primary school or whatever. So I was still a young fan, and there was no internet or anything like that. I hadn't become the jaded, grizzled fan that I am today. I thought it was the drizzling shits. And especially coming after the Brett Owen match, like that, like you just said before, rated 5 stars. You'd be hard pressed to find someone to look at that match and go, I think that sucked, that match, that Brett Owen match. I mean, that was just tremendous. But they still persevered with this Undertaker, whatever debacle, as the main event, as the match that closes out the show. And there was a few times on commentary I remember where, Vince is saying, "Oh, the fans, they're in awe. They're seeing two Undertakers," to try to explain why no one gave a shit. No one was making noise. No one cared. It was bullshit. And, I thought Brian Lee did an all right job of, looking kind of like the Undertaker, maybe from a distance, but then when you get them up close, it's like, yeah, we can clearly tell. It even as a kid, I thought this was terrible.
I think I may have been younger than you at that period when I first saw it, because I know it was one of the tapes that I rented as well. I had access to 3 video shops. One didn't have a huge amount of wrestling. My main one had a lot, but it was more current, and the Video Easy actually had some of the older stuff at the time. So we'd go there on occasion, and that's where I'd start getting like the 94, 95, even some 96 WWF stuff. Yep. So it was very early into my fandom that I was watching this. And I remember, I thought it was cool just because it looked like the video games.
Yeah.
With the alternate attire, same player from WrestleMania, the arcade game.
Yeah.
But that's all I've really got to contribute on that.
But I mean, Brian Lee, he was all right. He was a good talent. I think his heel work has been a lot better than his babyface work in Smoky Mountain. Then later in ECW, and then even later he was Chains in the WWF. But yeah.
So, moving on. We're skipping a year here, and we start bouncing around the timeline. It was linear, but Wait
a minute.
Oh, you still got more?
1995.
Oh, we had 95, did we?
No, there was a SummerSlam in 1995.
There was. I was going to skip past it.
It happens every year, once a year, from 1988 on.
1995 SummerSlam in the Civic Arena at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Main event was Diesel going over Mabel in 9 minutes.
And you didn't enjoy that?
The WWF title. Moving on.
Ladder match for the Intercontinental title, Shawn Michaels and Razor. I didn't know the
Bertha Faye and Alundra plays.
I was going to say, what did you think of that?
I haven't seen this show.
I think I've seen it, but it's been a long time.
Bit of Smokey representation there too. Barry Horowitz and Skip Candido.
There's nothing really on here. I mean, I've seen the ladder match, the first one between Razor and was that? Did they had a previous ladder match before this, didn't they?
Yeah, Mania 94.
Yeah, Mania 94. Yeah. So, apparently they've had another ladder match. I can't remember it. So,
you know what? Looking at this card, with Undertaker and Karma, Isaac Yankem, I think I have seen this, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think the Hakushi and Kid match reviewed reasonably well, but I don't know.
Yeah. We've got more Smokey as well. And I'm not just talking about the smoking guns. We had the Blue Brothers that were
Ron and Don.
Ron and Don Harris as well. With Uncle Zebekiah, who was Dirty Dutch Mantel. So I guess so what was this, 95? Yeah, I think Smokey, I think they only went for like another year after this. So
they were gone in 95.
Oh, 95. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, we're kind of seeing some of the smoky talent arriving, and various levels of success. Oh, and you've even got Bob Holly as well.
Yeah, Hollywood Bob
from the very early Smoky Mountain tapings. So, It's interesting looking at this card, Hunter Hearst Helmsley in the second match against Bob Holly. He certainly rose up the ranks after a few years of toiling.
Well, yeah, I mean, Bob main evented the 03 Rumble against Brock Lesnar. So, yeah, he got there in the end.
He got there. Yeah, he made it eventually. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming that the ladder match between Shawn and Razor was good. I just have no recollection of it at all.
Yeah.
And how bad for Diesel and King Mabel to have to follow that as the main event.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was actually King of the Ring, but this was around the time period where fans were chanting ECW.
Yeah.
At the quality of the work being put out by this company.
Yeah, and yeah, and I think we talked about it on an earlier podcast that 95 was the year WCW launched Nitro, and it got off to a pretty good start, and this is why, because a lot of the WWF pay-per-views around this time were really not that great. I've heard good things about Bret Hart and Isaac Yankem, another Smoky Mountain wrestler.
The man of Knox County, Tennessee.
Yeah, he's done well for himself.
Which I believe is actually in the Smoky Mountains.
Oh my god, he's come full circle. Old Glenn Jacobs there as the evil dentist. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the time for the Bertha Faye Alundra Blaze match, 4 minutes, like just over 4 minutes. So, and just a lot of stuff on here that's not that great. So that's why we don't have great recollections of it. We've tried to burn it from our memory.
So yeah, 1996. So we're in the Gund Arena in Cleveland, Ohio, which is pretty much in the safe territory. And Shawn Michaels defending the belt against Vader.
Ooh.
So yeah, this was a good match, I thought. I really enjoyed it. This is one of the ones I've gone back and watched for the cast.
Nice.
Yeah, like I'm a big fan of Shawn, to sort of counter your Brett love a little bit. And yeah, massive fan of Vader. This is probably the highest point in Vader's WWF run. The match was good. That being said, it suffered from some stupid booking. There was a botch in there, or it looked like Shawn was going to drop the elbow, but Vader might have been out of position. So he pretty much just jumped, landed on his feet, and then hit him in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think spat on him and was just a dick. Yeah.
Yeah, which seemed to fit the general consensus of Shawn backstage at that time period.
Yeah.
But yeah, that singular botch aside and the shitty booking of the finishes, multiple, good match. The first finish was a count out. Vader slammed Shawn outside, got back in the ring, and hey, it's a count out. Then Cornette promoing, we're here to win the title. We don't want to win a match that way. So they restart the match, and then Shawn picks up Cornette's racket after failed interference, beats Vader around a bit. So it's disqualified.
Yeah.
Cornette back on the mic. We're here to win the stinking title. Restart the match. And then third time's a charm for Shawn. He gets the win there, and yeah, that's what it is. This match also, it's a minor thing, but there's a shot of Shawn taking a dive on Vader over the ropes. That's a pretty iconic shot. Appears in a lot of video packages, including one I'm going to talk about quite soon.
Yeah.
It didn't really stick around and watch too much more from this event. But yeah, that match there, I enjoyed.
Yeah. It's such a shame with Vader because, I mean, you see the way he came in, and considering he'd never been in the WWF before, they're just bringing him in fresh. It seemed like they were really going to do a lot with him.
Mm.
And I don't know if it was, I mean, we've heard the stories, particularly after this match, like you said, Shawn got the shits, and, whether there was some politics that went on that kind of. But Vader, unfortunately, kind of went downhill, quite quickly after. Well, maybe not quite quickly, but it was a gradual decline, unfortunately. But I liked the Boiler Room Brawl match between Mankind and The Undertaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it was what you would call a cinematic match because they filmed all the Boiler Room stuff prior, I believe. And then when they went out to the ring, it was like they just come from the Boiler Room, the way that they kind of presented it. And yeah, I mean, it was something different. I think Mankind put a lot of new life into the Undertaker, no pun intended. Because like we looked at we just kind of went through the previous year, Undertaker's wrestling karma. It was that era where he was just wrestling just anybody really, and just useless kind of matches. But I think Mankind really brought a lot out. Undertaker gave him new life, and I like the Boiler Room Brawl, and I'm pretty sure that was where Paul Bearer turned heel. When the Undertaker came out to the ring and Paul Bearer had the urn and he chose to hit the Undertaker with the urn, and now he's with Mankind. So that was pretty cool after going back to as a kid, watching the Undertaker debut, the Survivor Series all those years ago, and then not long after that, Paul Bearer came in and he was the iconic manager of the Undertaker. Now, he's with Mankind. So, yeah, that's a good match that I'd mention from this year.
It's an interesting year with the cinematic matches because they also did the Hollywood Backlot Brawl at Mania a few months ago with Piper and Goldust.
That's right. Yes.
So yeah, some strange things going on in '96.
And that was a brutal match. That was pretty brutal. I don't know if you've seen it.
Not for a long time.
Yeah. Like Piper really laid it in, and yeah, it was good stuff. But yeah, you're right. It was they were kind of doing some different stuff around this time.
Yeah. So 1996. Odd year. Okay, so 1997, geez, they're really sticking in this same area. We're at the Continental Airlines Arena in East Rutherford, New Jersey for SummerSlam 97, subtitled Heart and Soul.
Oh, that's lovely.
This event, notable for a few things. Unfortunately, one of them was this is where Owen dropped Austin on his head.
Yeah.
Causing him neck injuries that would ultimately cut his career short and make the next couple of years reasonably difficult for him. Possibly the only time in history Owen Hart actually botched a move. But yeah, unfortunate, but yeah, significant. And main event of this, Bret Hart and The Undertaker.
Yeah, that was a good match. And I'm trying to think if there was some sort of stipulation or something where if Bret didn't beat The Undertaker, he wouldn't wrestle in the United States anymore. I'm just I'm not too sure. I think it was so what do we wear? 97.
Yeah, so Bret was doing the heel face
yes,
standing on the side of the border.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, that was a really huge deal. Like the Hart Foundation, where it wasn't the tag team, it was the group where they were heels in the US, and everywhere else, particularly in Canada, they were the baby faces. And I think there was different stipulations. And Bret's was if he lost, he wouldn't wrestle in America again, which I would argue and say that probably gave away the finish.
It really seems like more of a win for Bret too.
Yeah. But I guess they thought, well, we'll have Shawn there, and so that'll put some doubt that he could actually get out of this, winning the match. Of course, Shawn botches, the chair shot. He tries to get Bret and he hits Undertaker and has to count. But yeah, I remember it being I remember it being an all right match. So, but yeah, I mean, unfortunately, yeah, the whole injury, it was so weird. I mean, the way Owen Hart did the pile driver, it was such an odd way of doing it. Uh,
Yeah, I guess with the Undertaker doing it the other way.
yes, you might be right. Yeah, he may have altered it because of the Undertaker being on the card as well. But and then you that was the kiss my ass match. So that was the other stipulation where each of the Hart Foundation guys had a stipulation. So um, yeah, so Austin obviously didn't want to have to have to kiss Owen's ass, so he somehow managed to finish the match, even though he was clearly messed up.
Yeah, the roll up he used was
It wasn't really even a roll up, really, was it?
gave him a nice little tap, and then ended up, Owen did a lot of work for him. So yeah,
Yeah. And the British Bulldog and Ken Shamrock, I don't remember it other than the stipulation for that was that if Bulldog lost, he would eat a can of dog food after the match. So I'm thinking if I'm Brett, I'm thinking like, well, geez, Davey Boy kind of, he's just going to eat some dog food. If I lose, I can't wrestle in America again, which is where they do most of their events. So I'm pretty much screwed. So, but yeah, I can't remember because I was so much of a WCW fan, and I think that's where we're going to start to run into some issues as we get into this period. I mean, I know for myself, I wasn't watching a lot of WWF pay-per-views. Generally, I would like the main events, like the upper card stuff. Didn't really like a lot of the mid card opening stuff. So, yeah, this is when we're starting to get into my knowledge of SummerSlam starting to dissipate.
yeah. So through this period, a lot of what I was watching was either rented tapes or that brief period where with Optus cable, the WWF stuff, we got superstars and pay-per-views, but they were 3 months behind.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, Foxtel had the current stuff, I believe, but we didn't have Foxtel. So yeah, basically, I watched '97, and yeah, the next couple of shows I watched a lot later, really out of context, and being like really a historic point in the business history with the Attitude Era. It's not really doing these shows justice if we sort of breeze past them with sort of half knowledge and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
So I guess we might revisit them at a later date, a little bit more in depth when we've both become a little bit more familiar with the stuff. But yeah, at the moment, touching on these shows, yeah, we're not going to do the shows justice.
Yeah.
So
Maybe if we're still on the air next year, we'll do another SummerSlam special,
yeah,
Attitude Era edition.
yeah. But that's not where we leave it off. Some of you might think that's where we should.
I think we should have been cut off a long time ago.
So WCW closes in 2001, and then we go to obviously next year is 2002. So this particular show, SummerSlam 2002, it's a very special show for me. One of actually probably my favorite WWEF pay-per-view of all time.
Oh, interesting. I don't think I've heard about this.
Yeah, so at this point, I just mentioned the TV stuff. The WWE pay-per-views were available on Optus as well as Foxtel. And I believe there was a little bit of a merger going on, and we actually had access to Fox Sports, which gave us Raw at a reasonable time frame. With the time that it aired, I didn't see a lot of it due to conflicting with Blue Healers on Channel 7. Um,
Good lord.
and yeah, having limited TVs in the house. But the bit with Shawn Michaels coming back, I actually saw a bit of. And as a Shawn fan from earlier, I was all over that and very keen. I'd been paying a little bit more attention to the company after Mania 18, which is this year, seeing a little bit more. Then they ran the angle with Shawn and Hunter, where they briefly reformed DX only to have an angle with the turn. Then over the couple of weeks on Raw, Hunter was gonna. Shawn got attacked. Hunter was going to find out who did it. It turned out it was Hunter. And that video package aired a lot on Main Event, which I think was still Main Attraction, the pay-per-view channel, hyping the show up. And there were periods there where I'd just sit and watch that package on repeat. I thought it was the best shit ever. Yeah, I watched it back for the podcast, and it gave me the goosebumps. Still, it's it's so good. I rate it so highly. And there's actually 3 matches on this show that I'm going to discuss.
Awesome.
Yeah, the first of which is Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio, the opening match. It was one of Mysterio's first matches in the company. I think he'd done like house shows and maybe a televised match or two. But yeah, this was just a good 10-minute sprint between two guys who hadn't really had much to do with each other prior, had come from very different worlds, but had a shitload of chemistry. It was a really good match. And Ray being fresh to the fans and still having knees that functioned as well as they should have. Yeah, I've got a lot of love for that match. Yeah, then we move into, well, it was the main event, but I'm doing this out of order. Brock Lesnar and The Rock for the, at that point, the WWE Undisputed Championship. And yeah, Brock had been on the main roster for about 4 months at this point. And to have that match 4 months in, like, I'd always sort of underrated that match just based on the amount of love I had for Shawn and Hunter. But that was a really good match with a guy who should have been a lot greener than he was.
Yeah.
So I don't think this really skews into our listener base. But if there are people that are only familiar with Brock Lesnar after he come back in 2012 and don't really see the big deal, go back and watch his first run. He was ridiculously talented. The crowd flip-flopped a bit too. We're in New York here, the Nassau Coliseum.
Yeah.
So
that might
crowd. They flip-flopped a bit too. And they was surprised when Brock won. But yeah, I think they were ready to see The Rock go when this was his last match of his full-time run.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of lost quite a bit of interest in wrestling after WCW finished up. But I do remember seeing the stuff with Brock Lesnar when he first came in. And I remember he completely obliterated Spike Dudley.
Yeah.
And and then got into it with the Hardy Boys. They're like hitting him with chairs, and he's like, it's not really phasing him. And Paul Heyman was just the best person to put him with to get him over. So yeah, I concur with you that that when he first arrived and that whole first run was really interesting, and it was good to see someone different in the main event.
Yeah. But yeah, great match. That if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend going and checking out. But yeah, great matches. Shawn and Hunter. Like, honestly, this is one of my favorite matches of all time.
Wow.
Until I started taking an intentional dive for the Japanese stuff, and for just other stuff that's happened. At one point, this was in my top 2 matches of all time.
Wow, that's
Uh,
high praise coming from you.
yeah, like for a Triple H match in WWE. Yeah, I fucking love this match. This was Sean's return after 4 years of the back injury. There was sort of the JR on commentary is fantastic as well at selling this, and like yeah, he gets a lot of criticism now, but this is peak JR, I think. Yeah, Sean was out for 4 years. JR had the questions over. Oh yeah, how is he back? Is he good? If you had a broken back, that never fully heals. And yeah, Sean come back better than he was.
Yeah.
This was an unsanctioned match, which was a good line from the video package. Eric Bischoff said, this match is unsanctioned. Officially, this match will never happen. Then Triple H comes along, but it will happen, Eric. Yeah, and they
And he said Kane was creepy for being with Katie Vick. Oh my god.
yeah, they beat the shit out of each other. Every point of this match made sense.
Yeah.
Like I watched it back, not intentionally trying to be critical, just to enjoy it. But I could not pick a fault in this. Like it was a masterclass in how to have a WWE hardcore match, which I think a lot of people need because those matches don't matter anymore. Sean did the big spots, and the crowd was eating it up. There was one point where the momentum shifted. Triple H caught Sean with a backbreaker, and you would have thought he pulled a bazooka on him. Like
Yeah.
Sean sold it as if it was the worst possible thing to happen, and it was beautiful. Yeah, Sean of the finishing stretch, like Sean won, but it was with a roll up after they'd both sort of scouted the Sweet Chin Music and the pedigree. The crowd went ballistic off that, and if you stop the tape there, sweet, great, happy ending, move on. Immediately after, Triple H hit Sean with a sledgehammer in the back. That wipes him out for a few months, establishes Triple H as the biggest piece of shit heel that he can be. It's beautiful.
Oh my god.
So yeah, I love that match so much.
Yeah, I think early 2000s WWE was pretty good stuff. Just from what the bits and pieces that I've seen.
Yeah, there was good stuff in it. There was some garbage as well, but yeah, the good stuff, it was good. And I remember when that happened. In Australia, the Sunday night America is the Monday for us, and Mum would not let me take the day off school to watch the pay-per-view. So I remember sitting there in class, and I'm just thinking, oh, I want the pay-per-view. I'm going to go home and watch it. And I was going through the video package in my head. I was so hyped for it. It lived up to every expectation I had. And what are we, like 19 years later, it's still some of the best shit I've seen in wrestling. And I've seen a lot more than I had then.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I don't think I've heard this story before. So
And there we go. Podcast exclusive.
there you go.
And while I'm not going to look at any matches from the show, a little shout out to the next year, 2003. That was the first tape that I traded. So I had the pay-per-view there, recorded it, and traded it for WrestleMania 18 with someone who is now one of my closest friends, Shane.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, so we're both new at the school, and that's sort of the basis that our friendship started on. And yeah, so I mean, the show was alright, but yeah, it's just got that special place in my own wrestling fan history, and I guess, well, my personal life too. Yeah, so that's SummerSlam 2003. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit now to 2005 for a match that sort of a bit of a deviation, but I guess this time period is a pretty big deviation from what we've been talking about. It was the Edge and Matt Hardy match.
Was that when Matt Hardy and him had that Edge and Matt Hardy had that little issue,
Yeah, that little issue.
Lita issue?
Yeah, so Matt Hardy at that point was dating Lita in real life, or better known, or Amy Dumas, because yeah, it's more of a shoot if they use the real names. Then Adam or Edge sort of gotten a bit friendly with Lita. Lita started dating Edge. Matt wasn't too happy about it. I'm sure some of the details were embellished for the storytelling. I haven't really looked at shoot interviews or dirt sheets or anything like that. But the way it was presented was actually really, really good. Looking back at a little bit of it, it's I don't like Matt Hardy, and looking back at it, I can sort of see reasons why I don't like him from that. The match itself was just a fight. It was beautiful. I'd just like to give a very special mention to Lita at this show. Yeah, she was fantastic.
Oh, so Lita, if you're listening, feel free to let us know.
But yeah, so the match itself, yeah, a 4 minute 50 fight, ref stoppage. The guys were working stiff, and yeah, Matt just was pissing blood, couldn't defend himself. Edge kicked him in the head too many times, and ref called it. So yeah, it was enjoyable. Maybe not so much for Matt, but yeah, it was enjoyable to watch, enjoyable to go back and watch, and yeah, the main event of this show was Hogan and Shawn when Shawn was yeah defining overselling.
Yeah.
Was
Yes.
a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, yeah, it was what it was. I don't think Hogan should have been going 20 minutes at
No.
most parts of his
Shit,
career, let alone 2005.
No.
But yeah, that's 05.
I was just going to say, just on that Matt Hardy Edge thing, I mean, I guess there was some sort of situation where Vince released Matt Hardy, and then
for carrying on like a fucking idiot.
Oh, all right. I wasn't going to go. Okay, but you really don't like Matt Hardy, do you?
Well, at the time, like he was understandably upset by the personal issue, but he made a personal issue a public issue. So really, in a way, he was bringing the company into disrepute, which I mean, shit, they'll do that themselves many times over history. But the way Matt was carrying on, he should have been sacked for.
Yeah, and yes, oh, pardon me, excuse me. Yeah, so that's what Vince did, and I guess the fan. What was interesting to me was the fans seemed to bring him back, didn't they? They kind of made a big thing, and so Vince says, "Oh, we're going to give you what you want," and so Matt Hardy comes back, and I remember watching, he got that initial good pop from the fans, and then he had a match, and people were dead for it. And and then Edge replied with his promos, and the general consensus was Edge is a star. He acted more like a star. He had that anger. He had that real, just raw energy, and you could just see that Edge was just on a whole other level. And I don't think that did well for Matt Hardy actually to come back. Yeah, because I think people wanted him back, and then they got him back, and they were kind of like, yeah, okay, it's just Matt Hardy again.
Yeah. I mean, well, Matt did very little after this for quite a while. Personally, I think this was the most interesting Matt Hardy has been, and has not hit that peak again since then.
No.
Maybe a hot take, but I'm not down with the cinematic stuff that he's been doing. But yeah, Edge months later was the WWE champion. So I think it was the big gold belt. He was the top champion of whichever brand, because whatever the fuck. But oh no, it might have been the WWE title. But I don't know. I don't care which belt it was. But yeah, months later he was on top. So
Yeah,
it was definitely headed that way.
It was almost to me like, and I feel bad for saying this, but almost like a Marty Jannetty, Shawn Michaels scenario,
Well,
where
weren't tag partners, but Edge and
yeah,
Matt.
yeah, but yeah. What did you? Oh, geez, what's going on over there?
All good, all good.
Oh, you're being ransacked. Can someone send help to Mr. Chrisman? No. And yeah, I totally agree with the Hulk Hogan Shawn Michaels match. I don't know what they thought they were doing, giving Hogan over 20 minutes at that point in his career, and Michaels just ridiculous.
Take it
Like,
this.
yeah, I mean, look, I'm as big a fan of Mr. Perfect as anyone else, but even I kind of felt like sometimes his selling was a little over the top. This was Mr. Perfect selling on steroids. And yeah, it just made a mockery of the whole thing. So yeah, I agree.
So yeah, that was that. Yeah, so that's pretty much the end of our SummerSlam journey, but I just want to give an honorable mention to 2013, one of the brief periods where I dipped in and watched for a bit and then dipped out when I realized how bad the product was. But yeah, the SummerSlam 2013 show, notable for a reasonably good match between Alberto Del Rio and Christian for the one of the world titles. Brock Lesnar and CM Punk in a no DQ match that, from memory, was actually quite good. I guess with the size dynamic too. Yeah, they had a lot to play with, and Punk probably had the shits with that match. And I don't know. I think he might have crucified it in his shoot interview with Colt Cabana after he left. I can't remember. I could be wrong. It happens occasionally, sometimes multiple times on the podcast. And the Daniel Bryan and John Cena match for the other title, which was a very good match. Bryan went over Cena, which was largely seen as a surprise at that point, especially because he beat him with a move that he hadn't really won a match with before. Was the running knee. Not the shitty V trigger. Actually, I like the V trigger, but I just think the booking of it's bad. But not the V trigger style knee, more of a Kenta knee.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it was a big moment for Bryan. And then Triple H. Hang on, I'm not too sure on the after bullshit here, but Randy Orton brought out his briefcase or his lunchbox, cashed it in, took the belt in 8 seconds, and that I think Triple H turned at some point in there. That started the authority angle, which eventually would lead to Bryan winning the belt at Mania 30. But yeah, there was WWE shit. But the match itself, Bryan and Cena, yeah, that was a good match.
Oh my God. Tell us what you think, mate. Jesus Christ.
When you've got an authority figure setting up a little heel group and then they do this and they screw a guy and screw a guy and screw a guy. I'm sorry, I'm not fucking watching that.
Oh, all right. No one's forcing you.
No, and that's why I fell off the WWE after that Mania. I didn't watch most of the lead in between here and there. Every time I feel like checking the product out, they seem to retread the same old garbage that was crap the first 4 times they did it. But this is what we do. So that's modern WWE. So yeah, I guess focus on the good stuff that we've just spent the last hour plus discussing. So SummerSlam, it's been a ride.
Yeah, and it's good to hear that SummerSlam is still promoted as being one of the bigger pay-per-views on the calendar. It was one of the big 4 for a long time in the 80s and 90s before we got a pay-per-view every 2 minutes.
Yep.
But yeah, I hope it comes across to you guys listening. I was really, really looking forward to doing this podcast. I mean, as I do every week. But yeah, especially to talk about some of those older SummerSlam matches, which is really my forte, and I apologize for not having a great knowledge on certain eras. But yeah, as we both said, we kind of dropped off and different times, so we didn't really want to pretend to know what we're talking. Well, I suppose that's kind of our gimmick.
That's what we do, isn't it? Yeah.
That's kind of what we do. But I think we just had a little more knowledge in certain areas. Certain other areas, we would have just been, taking the piss. So, yeah.
So yeah, apologies if we've glossed over any of your favourite SummerSlam moments. Feel free to let us know your SummerSlam memories. You've got plenty of ways of doing that. We've got podcast at thewrestlingroadshow.com if you want to send us one of the old electronic letters. We've also got the Twitter, and that would be
Wrestling Roads 1.
That's on the Twitter. We've also got the Facebook, for those of you that are into that. What's the Facebook page?
That would be facebook.com/The Wrestling Roadshow, all one word.
There we go. So, yeah, plenty of options there. Let us know what you think. If you've got any ideas for future podcasts, let us know. And, if we can do them, we'll do them. If we need to study up on history, like one of the suggestions we got this week, we've got some studying to do. Drop us a line. Let us know what you think. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. Check out the website, www.thewrestlingroadshow.com. Plenty of quality content on there. We've got profiles. We've got moments of matches in history. And we got the road trip music series. Last week was Ultimo Dragon's theme, Separados by Louis Miguel.
Love that song.
Yeah, and that got some love from Tajiri on the Twitter. So,
yeah, it did. Yeah, that was great.
That popped me, and there we go. So
it doesn't take much. I mean, nothing against Tajiri. I mean, just, doesn't take much for us to get excited here at the Roadshow.
So, I'll take that endorsement. WrestlingRoadshow.com, endorsed by Tajiri.
Ooh. We don't have to pay him $50 for that, do we? What would $50 be in yen?
It would be, I haven't got the current currency conversion.
Jeez, what are you doing over there?
It'd be about $50 Australian. It'd be maybe 4,000 yen.
Wow.
Give or take.
Jeez. That sounds like a lot.
It's about $50 Australian.
Oh, right. Okay.
So check that out. Thanks for joining us for the podcast. We're starting to amass a little bit of a library now. We've done a few of these. So if you're unfamiliar with them, if this is maybe your first one or you're new to the cast, we've got a bit to go and check out now with the back catalogue. We've got a couple of episodes where we just discuss the state of the world, of the wrestling world. We look at Goldberg's debut on one of them, King of the Ring 93, the first big Smoky Mountain show from 92, the Volunteer Slam. We've looked at the world-class Christmas Star Wars from 1982 last week. And, we've got the big bumper Olympic special. There's plenty there to check out. Check it out. And, thanks for listening, and hope you join us on future episodes. We will catch you down the road.
Brum, brum, brum.